When we talk about type 2 diabetes, our minds usually jump straight to the physical stuff, right? Blood sugar, insulin, diet, exercise. But what if one of its biggest impacts is something we can't easily see? New research is uncovering this incredibly powerful and honestly often overlooked connection between diabetes and our mental health. Okay, let's get into it. Seriously, just take a second. If I say type 2 diabetes, what are the first things that pop into your head? Probably checking your blood glucose, maybe insulin shots, watching what you eat, making sure you exercise. And yet, you're absolutely right. Those are all critical parts of managing it. But that's only one side of the coin. There's this whole other massive part of the story. The day in, day out management, the biological changes happening in your body, the stress of it all. It really takes a toll. We're going to look at that mental and emotional side of things. And trust me, the science is pretty eye-opening. And look, this isn't just about feeling stressed or some vague idea. We're talking about hard data. The evidence for this deep connection is really starting to pile up, thanks to some huge new studies. So there was this landmark study that came out in PLOS Medicine that really shows us the scale we're dealing with. Researchers in Hong Kong did a deep dive into hospital data for over 1.5 million people. They wanted to see what was really going on. And this wasn't some small survey. I mean, look at these numbers. They tracked over 1.5 million people, carefully matching those with type 2 diabetes to those without, and they followed them for nearly 8 years. We are talking about a seriously robust, large-scale set of data here. The study found a lot of things, but one finding in particular was just, wow. They looked specifically at the group of people who were diagnosed young, before they turned 40. So for this group, what do you think was a top reason they ended up hospitalized? Get this. The answer was mental health, a staggering 38.4%. Almost 40% of all the bed days for this group were because of mental health disorders. That means for every 10 days they spent in a hospital, nearly 4 of them were for mental health. That is just a huge number. And we're not talking about minor things either. The study pointed to hospitalizations for really serious conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and major depression. It just goes to show how incredibly deep this connection can run. So here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just a simple cause and effect where diabetes leads to stress. Nope, the link is way more complex than that. It's actually a two-way street. And Professor Brianna Mazouk, who's an expert in this field, she just nails it. She says the relationship is bidirectional, so each condition can actually influence the other one. How exactly does that work? Let's break it down. Okay, so think of it like this. On one side, having diabetes, with all the biological stress and the psychological burden of managing it, that can raise your risk for developing mental health issues. But on the other side, having a pre-existing mental health condition can actually increase your risk of developing type 2 diabetes in the first place. And the stats really back this up. People who have diabetes are 2 to 3 times more likely to deal with depression compared to the general population. I mean, that's a huge jump. The daily grind, the biological changes, it all adds up. Now, let's flip that coin. Let's look at it from the other direction. People who are living with schizophrenia have a 2 to 5 times greater chance of developing type 2 diabetes. This is definitely not a coincidence. There are real biological and behavioral reasons for this. So the big question is, why? What's actually going on inside the body that creates this powerful link? Well, scientists are finding that there are a few key biological pathways that these conditions actually share. We're going to walk through 4 of the main ones here: the body's stress response system, the big role of chronic inflammation, the kind of surprising job insulin has in the brain, and finally, the complicated side effects from medications. Okay, first up, there's something called the HPA axis. Just think of it as your body's command center for stress. What happens is in both depression and diabetes, this system can get thrown out of whack and start overproducing the stress hormone cortisol. And high cortisol levels can make insulin resistance worse and contribute to symptoms of depression. Next, we've got chronic inflammation. You probably hear this term a lot, and for good reason. It's like a common enemy here. Inflammation can make your body's cells less responsive to insulin, which is a key feature of type 2 diabetes. And at the exact same time, high levels of inflammation are strongly linked to mood disorders, especially in the brain. And here's one that might actually surprise you. We think of insulin as just a blood sugar hormone, but it has this kind of secret side job in the brain.
It helps regulate our mood chemicals like serotonin and dopamine. So when you've got insulin resistance, that delicate chemical balance can get all messed up, which can directly impact how you feel emotionally. And finally, the very medications used to treat these conditions can make things even more complicated. For instance, a lot of antipsychotic drugs can cause side effects like weight gain and metabolic issues, which, you guessed it, increases the risk for diabetes. And then on the flip side, some diabetes treatments can cause low blood sugar, which can trigger symptoms that feel exactly like a panic attack. Anxiety, shakiness, confusion. It's a really tricky web.
So given this deep, tangled connection, it's pretty clear you can't manage one of these conditions without thinking about the other. So let's pivot. Let's talk about what we can actually do about it. How can someone living with diabetes proactively support their mental well-being? Professor Mazuk again really hits on the core challenge here. The constant, complex stuff you have to do to manage diabetes, checking blood sugar, taking medicine, watching every meal, creates this huge strain that over time can really weigh on your mental health. So what's the game plan? Well, experts point to about 6 key areas. It starts with the absolute fundamentals, what one expert calls daily hygiene. That's your exercise, sleep, and diet, non-negotiable. Then it's about building your team, right? Finding doctors who actually understand that these two things are linked. And then comes the daily work, cutting out stress where you can, creating a solid routine for your day, and this is so important, not being afraid to ask for professional help when you need it. And all of this leaves us with a final, much bigger question. This evidence doesn't just change how a person should think about their own health, it really challenges our entire healthcare system. If the mind and the body are this deeply connected, how can we keep treating them in separate silos? It really makes you think, how do we move forward and build a system of care that truly treats the whole person, not just a collection of conditions?